72 hours of inactivity for the Cincinnati Bengals outside minor deals is quite frankly at this point astounding. I cannot tell you what they're doing, but we're going to try to talk about it. Let's go.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, where we're more active than the team we cover. I'm Jake Liscow, he's James Rapien, and we are Locked On Bengals on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as we continue to cover free agency here, if you're new to the show, you've missed all week. Yesterday was a big rant episode. We've talked about the guys that they have signed in episodes this week, and today we continue to be perplexed at why the Bengals have been so inactive in such a critical period where there were clear priorities for this team. If you are new to this show, you can hit that subscribe button. You can hit the bell. Make sure you don't miss an episode on YouTube. And if you follow the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, if you're just listening, that'll make it really easy for you to not miss an episode. Like all you everydayers out there and all of the Locked On Bengals insiders who are subscribed to join subtext.com/Locked On Bengals, who are in the know of everything we know here on Locked On Bengals. And James, it's another day of nothing. For a moment, it looked like there would be something, but it turns out that as of 10:34 p.m. Eastern time, somehow for a third straight day, we have no external free agent signings to talk about.
It's embarrassing. That's what it is. It's embarrassing. Let's call it like it is now. This is supposed to be the most important offseason in Bengals history. And yes, I think I have the best job in the world. I'm also tired. And the crazy part is I'm tired of all the inactivity. Like you're supposed to be building something. And I think TJ Slayton, who I met today, seems like a really nice guy. They should have added like 5 TJ Slaytons by now. A lot of guys entering their second contracts that could be part of this core for the next few years. Like that's what this free agency period was supposed to be about. And just talking with various media members today when I was at Paycor Stadium, and again, I'm making it very clear, media members, I was like, they're just going to add a guard and that's it, huh? Like, that's it. Like, that's what they're going to do. And no one pushed back. And if I would have told you that 2 weeks ago, that they would come into free agency and they wouldn't have any of their big 3 signed, the Trey Hendrickson thing continues to just, is there new news? I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like it. And they gave him this permission to request or permission to seek a trade, and it just, whatever. It's all muddy now, like pretty predictable. But and their team just isn't better. And I keep coming back to the Joe point. And I don't think Joe's pressing panic right now, but he's watching. He's looking. He sees Kayvon Chason sign a $5 million deal. He sees the Eagles go get a pass rusher, what's his name, for $1.5 million today. He sees the Eagles fill in the margin. I mean, they added multiple veterans. The pass rusher, the Kansas City traded for me, what was in New England with Josh Uche for $1.5 million. Like what the hell are they doing? Answer this question, Jake. Could they rush the passer last year?
I would say one guy could.
One guy could. Well, that guy, you don't even know if he's going to be on your roster, right? So the answer is no, they couldn't. Because the one guy that could, you don't know technically if he's going to be on the roster or not right now. And they've added nothing to bolster their pass rush. It's unbelievable. And there's no way, like a rebuilding team, I get it. Like if they're truly rebuilding, go tell those veterans in that locker room they're rebuilding. Go tell Joe Burrow that he's going to have no shot in his age 28 season to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's wild. And yet they're putting him in that position right now. That's what's happening. And they can salvage it, but the margin for error now is super thin, and they have to be way more aggressive than anyone that's close to the team expects them to be. So it would have to be a shocker starting right now at 10:37 Eastern time on Thursday night.
And it's generally been a slow free agency for the entire NFL, especially since day one of the legal negotiating window on Monday. That's not an excuse. There are clear targets out there for the Bengals at multiple positions that could improve the team where there are clear needs for improvement. Those are moves the Bengals can make today. The Bengals, by my accounting, this includes rookies at least in this calculation, and it includes dead cap hits, have $27 million in top 51 offseason cap space. And we've seen the deals now for multiple guys. There's still some details up in the air for TJ Slayton, depending on what's prorated in his contract and what's not. If they were to sign all three guys that are in the air for extensions, including Trey Hendrickson with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I would estimate that they still have about $10 million plus or minus in cash to pay out, accounting for all the other expenses that they hold money aside for. But they don't know the answer on those three guys. So let me ask you this, James. Is this an example of the Bengals' rigidity and cap management style, which is to minimize dead money, and something that we wrung hands over with the T. Higgins contract, the Jamar Chase contract, the Trey Hendrickson question, where since they don't know where those things are going to land exactly, they're inactive outside of maybe one priority for a guard, which honestly, it's been days since we had an update on that. Like, who knows if they're even still in on Tevin Jenkins, who we thought they've been waiting for a couple of days. At this point, I'm starting to question even that. But could it be as simple as they're so bad at cap foresight and money management and so uncreative in that aspect that they're just like, well, we don't know exactly, so we better be safe. We better be safe and see how it falls. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
We talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how important it was for them to have T. Higgins done before the negotiating window because of the way they structure stuff, because of their comfort level, because of all of those things. We said, they can fit in whatever, but we know how they operate. We know that they play it safe. We know, I mean, they want to be the dead cap champions. Lowest dead money gets a ring every year. I mean, who gives a damn? Like, honestly, like that's so silly. Like, that element is silly because and I'm not saying throw money around. It's so funny. You see these people on social that defend this, and it's like, no one's saying throw money around and be irresponsible, but you're never like, you will not win in any profession you're in being passive. Very rarely does that work. Are there exceptions? Sure. But most of the time you have to be pretty darn aggressive. Most of the time you're going to have to take leaps of faith with really in any profession, any line of things. And so with this one, it's like, all right, well, do you want to win a ring or not? Well, if you do and you're in win now mode, which they're supposedly in, and I wrote that and I got pushback. Hey, that's their words. They're in win now mode. They want to win. I don't know how they can view this as a productive period. I don't know where they got better, how they appeased, satisfied their most important players, and at the same time improve their roster. And it doesn't take a genius to know how to improve their roster. Pass rush, guards, keep your stars, add some good draft picks and roll. Like, it's really not that hard to figure out like what they need. And so, yeah, I do wonder that. It's a good question. We talked about it before the negotiating window opened. Would Jamar, they do plan that, like, oh, well, we're planning on getting this extension done. So, you leave a little room. Who knows? But if that's the case, man, yeesh, this is, then the moves aren't coming, and then it's a failure. Because if they just bring back the stars, even if they pay all three, that's still not enough. You have to do more. And they haven't done squat in 3 days.
And we've said that too, that just bringing those guys back is not improving the team. It's keeping important players that made you okay in the first place, good on offense in the first place. Anyway, there's more on this conversation, including why the Bengals probably should hire a GM and what the Bengals can do to try to salvage this thing over the next couple of days when they generally haven't been great in free agency at this point, once it gets deep into things, at least in the last few years. We'll continue the conversation here as the Bengals have had a quiet week. Coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I got to be honest, Jake, I thought Cooper Flagg and the Duke Blue Devils were going to run away with it. But now Cooper Flagg dealing with an ankle sprain, an ankle injury, is going to miss the rest of the ACC tournament. It makes it a little more interesting. And whether you're bullish on Duke still, whether you think that someone else is going to cut down the nets, you got to get to FanDuel.com right now, where, again, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com and get on all the college hoops action all tournament long.
Friend of the show, Joe Goodberry, shared on Twitter on Wednesday a clip from Hard Knocks back when the Bengals drafted Andre Smith, revealing the Blackburn negotiating way, the Mike Brown greeting for Andre Smith when Andre Smith had freshly signed his deal.
Yeah.
And I bring all that up to say Duke Tobin, as far as we know, is not negotiating the biggest contracts for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a Blackburns. That's predominantly Katie's job.
Yes.
Other teams have general managers that do this job, not lawyers. Maybe the GM is also a lawyer, but that's part of a GM's job. And so when the Bengals get their valuations for players and then stick to them and talk about how more money is just something they're not willing to do, or if they're thinking about, what was it, Darius Hayward-Bay as a comparison for Andre Smith at the time, that they just weren't going to go that way. And it's very easy to think about those conversations decades ago, right? That was more than 20 years ago now. Maybe not quite. Yeah, it was.
Close to it. It was 2009. But yeah.
Okay, so not quite 2 decades ago, but and apply that to what we're dealing with today, where the Bengals have these numbers in their heads, and they just stick to them instead of and then that just makes me wonder, like, where do these numbers come from? Who is coming up with the valuations for players and how high they're willing to go? And then it just brings me back to the old, maybe the Bengals should hire a GM conversation that's been occurring for the last truly decades, like 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I think the Andre stuff is so interesting, and I get it. Mike Brown was absolutely right to say the in shape stuff. Andre Smith was out of shape, held out. This is before the rookie wage scale. So there's a lot there.
Very different CBA for sure, but just like projecting the negotiating style forward, that's very plausible.
No doubt, the Darius Hayward-Bay stuff. So he was drafted 7th, and then, anyways, we don't need. Who cares? To your point, one, I want Hard Knocks to be that awesome again. That was awesome.
Yeah.
2, thank God the banks exist. Did you see Andre Smith's agent walking out?
Yeah.
And I looked and I was like, you can see the ballpark. Like I can't even remember. And I was at the stadium at Paul Brown at the time in 2009. I can't even remember what it looked like back then. Thank goodness that it's transformed and it just feels different and looks different. But yeah, the answer is yes. Like, if from a negotiating standpoint, like, think about all of the things that have changed since 2009 to now, or from 99 to 2009 to now. And they've gone in sagas and in stages. And you look at it now, and there is no way in hell that Joe Burrow's deal should have gotten done the Thursday before the first game. And he shouldn't have had to sign it on that Saturday and then get on the plane to Cleveland. That is insane. That impacted that game. Now, I'm not saying that's why they lost, but that impacted that game as much as the calf and all this stuff, that the rain, it's the craziest rain ever. I don't care. You can't have that with your franchise. That should have been done weeks prior. And so when you have that stuff lingering, it affects guys. Jamar, it affects you. And in reality, someone should have said last year, hey, if you can get Jamar Chase under contract for the next 6 seasons, no other receiver has done that. You can push the envelope guarantee-wise here. You can push the envelope from a salary standpoint because you can spread it over 6 years. Whatever they would have offered, they could have offered him $40 million per year. Last year, it would be a steal now because they would have had that extra year to work it out, and they would have reset the market, and it would have been crazy. And guess what? It would have been fine. And that's the strategy that needs to change. So to your point, is that how do they get there? Is this Katie? Is it Troy? Is it Mike? I don't think it's Mike. I don't think Mike has anything to do with it anymore. And there were many, many years. I mean, think about it. Katie was handled that whole negotiation with Andre. Mike wasn't in that room. So that's what you're looking at and talking about for the past decade and a half, 2 decades. And fine, but they have to tweak it now because it's costing them and it's hurting them, even when they get it right in free agency and they get it right in the draft and they get it right with arguably the best quarterback on the planet. It cost them a game. It did. And with Jamar, it cost them at least a game. And you could argue 2 games because of not just the Patriots game, but the Chiefs game. Like clearly he was not in it in those 2 games like normal Jamar would be. And so, yeah, I think it's a good point by you. And that clip is wild. Again, I want that Hard Knocks. The NFL should mandate that. I want that. Get rid of the rookie wage scale if we get to see negotiations like that again.
Yeah. I mean, that's what offseason Hard Knocks should be. Imagine cameras in buildings in the last handful of days here this week.
Oh, dude.
It'd be some good TV.
Samaje, we will give you $5. All right, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Samaje. Congrats on the deal, by the way. I'm excited Samaje's back. No, I wasn't hating on Samaje. The reason I said Samaje is because I think he could take the joke. I have the list of guys here that they've signed, and I was gonna use one of the new guys, and I'm like, if like their family member shows them this clip, they're gonna be like, oh, so I use Samaje. I think he would laugh at it.
Yeah, they you say they need to change. I don't believe that there's any change coming at this point. I think we're back to like the 1990s in the way they're operating in free agency. And I think we've probably been there for a couple of years in a lot of ways.
Feels like it.
And the Orlando Brown Jr. signing, the notable exception there. And
have we told that story recently?
Not recently. The gist of it, I mean, you don't need to tell the full version. It's just that the Bengals weren't in, and I'll let you fill it in from there. But
yeah, I don't think they did any like deep dive on Orlando Brown Jr. in signing him. And like when you put together your offseason plan, I don't think that they were like, hey,
I remember it was a scramble. Like, hey, Frank, have you watched Orlando?
Yeah, go watch Orlando. What the hell are you talking about, man? Like, what do you mean go watch Orlando? Of course you should have watched Orlando. He found out at the combine he wasn't getting tagged. And that should have been the moment where the Bengals are like, all right, well, let's have a discussion here. And so that just shows Orlando wanted them and reached out to them. But that just shows you their approach. Like that was a few years ago. That was fresh off of a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game appearance. And we knew Jonah Williams couldn't really hold up in the AFC North against these big, awesome pass rushers as well as you'd want. So why wouldn't you have been in on Orlando? Why wouldn't you have discussed that? And it was a scramble drill. And that saved their free agency. Up to that point, they had only added and re-signed Jermaine Pratt. Like that was it. Remember, guys were just going, Jesse Bates had peeled off and Von Bell had peeled off, and they bring back Jermaine Pratt, and it's like tick.
And
tick,
Uncle
tick,
Mike
tick.
And Travion Williams. But yeah, nothing.
Uncle Mike. I was like, Mike Hilton signed. Yeah, my guy, Mike Thomas. Yes. But just brutal. It's that vision. It's that championship mindset and aggressiveness. Of course, you always start with the top free agents. Should we or shouldn't we? Here's why not. Next level. But why wouldn't you research? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, Jake.
Coming up next, let's talk about how they can salvage things, their track record after early days of free agency as we continue to wait for necessary moves from the Cincinnati Bengals to put themselves in a position to compete in 2025. And boy, am I sick of that sentence. We'll finish the show there next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And man, oh man, do I want to make Bengals jokes right now. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It can help you sign free agents and quality ones that can help protect Joe Burrow. No, Monarch Money is actually a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. And the beauty of Monarch Money is you can manage money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page, and it's convenient. Instead of having a bunch of different financial apps, you can just have Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Because we don't really have updates on the Trey Hendrickson trade situation, I think we mentioned that earlier in the show, or T. Higgins negotiation, or Jamar Chase negotiation, although people are increasingly talking about Jamar Chase waiting for Micah Parsons, as he wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, which if that's the case, then all right, we've got a waiting game with Jerry Jones and the Mike Brown family that we're waiting for Jamar Chase. We'll take a look at what can happen for the Bengals to salvage this free agency, because it's still possible. It's possible that we're going to look at our last 3 episodes, James, come the next time we talk and say, well, they proved us wrong. And I hope that happens. I truly do. I want to cover a team that has the best chance of winning next year. I do. Before we do that, just a brief trip down memory lane and doing some history here. The Bengals signed DJ Reader and Trey Waynes on day 1 of free agency back in 2020. And then Xavier Su'a-Filo on day 2. And then nothing until Josh Bynes, Mackenzie Alexander, days 8. And Von Bell, who came out of nowhere as a late signing on day 9. So if they could repeat that year and find a guy like Von Bell and a guy like Josh Bynes, some okay to solid players late in free agency, or in the case of Von Bell, somewhat transformative for your culture, late in free agency, great. Go to the next year, Trey Hendrickson, day 1. Mike Hilton, Chidobe Awuzie, day 2. Riley Reef, Larry Ogunjobi, day 5. Quentin Spain, day 9. We're missing the day 2 signings there. But then you go to the very next year, 2022. It was Ted Karras, Alex Kappa right away. Fred Johnson was in the mix too. And then there was a gap. Eli Apple, Hayden Hurst, day 4. Brandon Allen, day 4. Lel Collins, day 7. It's not very common that the Bengals take this kind of break after this little activity. And you could point to TJ Slayton and Oren Burks and Samaje Perine and re-signing their own guys. There's a bunch of moves they did right at the beginning of free agency. But this kind of gap, when there's this kind of clear pressing need, it's unusual. And that's why we continue to hammer that point and have been repeating ourselves a little bit for 3 days.
Yeah, it's because they should have already had one guard done. They should still be in on Tevin Jenkins. You're right. I haven't heard much on him, but they should try to get Tevin Jenkins done. They should be in on Brandon Scherf. Like, Scherf needs a ring. He's a veteran and he's a good pass protector. Why wouldn't he want to block for Joe Burrow? Like, it's, of course. And by the way, I'm just going to hammer this point home. They need to sign 2 starting guards. Like, if they sign 1, that's still a need. And there's a plethora of options on the market that make it much less of a need. And you can fill out your starting offensive line now. So why wouldn't you do that?
Or at least 4 options. Is 4 a plethora? Maybe there's 5.
I mean, there was
6. Maybe there's 6. If you count Jedrick
sure.
Wills, maybe there's 6.
You counting Shaq Mason?
I'm not. No.
Yeah. Okay. We should. Shaq Mason's good. He's still good. The Houston, they fired their OC who's getting head, like it was a joke over there. Track record's the track record. I think so. The point is there are a bunch of options and they don't have to break the bank on all of them. Like, fine, if you spend on Tevin Jenkins, well, then maybe you don't get Brandon Scherf. I would already have Scherf in stripes. I would have had Scherf or Zeitler in stripes probably day one of free agency, to be quite honest with you. And I would have paid Zeitler double what the Titans did. I would have given him 2 for $18, not cared. Done. He's playing at such a high level. I mean, the Titans, I know they're ecstatic to get him 1 year, $9 million. So there's that. But the scary part about this is we know they need more pass rush. The options are dwindling in general. And for the second offseason in a row, Calais Campbell and Dalton Reisner are two of the options. Like, just go after guys that are going to make you better. And it doesn't have to be Reisner on offense. There's more guard options, but it might have to be Campbell on defense. And fine, go get him, bring him in. He can help you. And I hope they do, because if you told me that they were able to get Tevin Jenkins and insert whatever right guard, I'm going to say
Will
Brandon
Hernandez. Sure.
Will Hernandez, Brandon Scherf, even you might not like, but you might think he's done, but even Shaq Mason, and then they get Calais Campbell. All right. Like, I feel pretty darn good about what they did. But I think they may do one of those.
Mm-hmm.
One of the 3. So after all this, it's like, all right, this is what happens. This is how you can salvage it and make it a successful free agency. And they may do one of the 3. I don't even think they're considering adding 2 guards right now. And I don't even think they're considering Calais Campbell.
And you could throw Zadarius Smith into the mix.
Oh, Zadarius Smith.
After he was cut, you could throw CJ Mosley into the mix after he was cut.
Oh my God. I forgot about Zadarius
last year, but why not? If we're talking about options, some safeties you could throw into the mix as well. You've mentioned Juan Thornhill. I think I'm also on board for Juan Thornhill, Marcus May. I mean, go down the list. There's guys out there.
Is Thompson still there?
Thompson.
Or the one safety. Oh, it's not Thompson. It's I don't have our sheet up. The safety that was injured, that has dealt with some injuries, was pretty darn good.
I'm going to need a little bit more than that. Point is,
Blackman from Indy.
Yeah, I was never getting to Blackman from Thompson.
No?
No.
It's been a long week, my friend. Asante Samuel Jr. Like,
yeah.
Like, can Asante Samuel Jr. be your Von Bell, where he's just kind of out there still? Like,
yeah,
they sicken me. I mean, Mike Hilton's just sitting there.
Meanwhile,
and I'm not saying they should bring Mike Hilton back, but you know what they should do? They should sign Zadarius Smith. That's another one. I agree with you. It's 4. Now that Bengals, it's 4. You need to sign Zadarius Smith. You need to sign Calais Campbell. You need to sign 2 guards. I'd feel pretty darn good about their depth if you did that. And obviously you got to handle business with Trey. But can you imagine that? Like, that you could have a pretty good pass rush if you did that.
I mean, at least at that point, you're not desperate for multiple positions going into the draft, which is where they are right now. They're looking to fill multiple starter needs in the draft where they're short a pick and you only have 3 picks in the first 2 days of the draft anyway. And meanwhile, Duke Tobin's remarks at the combine just have aged like milk this whole time. You know,
Azeez is still there too, by the way. Throwing out another name, Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah, sure. You want a rotational piece? Great. But
yep.
Not wanting to pay more for the same team, haven't accomplished that goal. Wanted to get an extension done with Trey, haven't accomplished that goal. Wanted to get the multi-year deals done for T quickly. Well, didn't do quickly. Might still get it done, period. Wanted to make Jamar the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Well, now he's waiting apparently for Micah Parsons. At least that's what people are saying. So I kind of wonder if Duke was hung out to dry at this point. I mean, my read on it at the time, and we talked about this, I'm pretty sure, on the show when we were analyzing what he had to say, was Duke is confident, and he hasn't spoken like this before. Surely he's on the same page with the front office and is to use the word of the day from the combine, aligned with the financial interests of the organization and those that sign the checks. And the further we get away from that, the less that seems to be true. And I wonder what Duke Tobin would say today if we gave him truth serum about the way things have gone so far. Maybe
Yeah,
we're way off. Maybe we're way off, but I can't imagine he's happy.
no, how can anyone in that building be happy right now?
I don't know.
Anyone.
You're not better. You're worse. I don't know.
I would not sleep. Like I would be, and maybe that's it. Maybe they're just good at separating it and like that. But like, do they realize? Like, let's just say they add a guard, and that's it. And you don't have the best draft in team history, and things go awry for a third straight year, and you miss the playoffs. What do you think happens then? The coaches that you just brought in, you're questioning them. Zach is going to be feeling the pressure. Joe, who knows how he's going to react. Like, there's a ripple effect, and that's why they have to do their job now. Like, their Super Bowl is now. The front offices, it's now. And they're wetting themselves down their leg. Like, that's what's happening. It's just they're not doing what they need to be doing. They're like, it'd be like if Joe Burrow threw 4 interceptions on the first 4 drives of Super Bowl 56. Like, that's how it feels. And they can rally, but boy, oh boy, they better rally now.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel great.
Well, it's not now at 11:04 p.m. Eastern time. I just gave the old social media one last refresh here, James, and there's nothing. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. When we have something to tell you, we'll be back. And hopefully that's before Sunday. I mean, really, would love to be back before then. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.